Good night and welcome to Mindful Live 157. I am your host Nathan Springer. Thank you for being here. It's lovely Thursday, the 24th of November in the Paradise Island Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. Thank you for being here. And on Thursdays, we're starting this. We started this since last week. Thursdays are just, talking Thursdays. We come on Thursday and chill. No direct topic for the night. We're just talking about the general issues. Let's see what the chat has to say. And if you are over there on TikTok, you can jump in and take part. Obviously, not everyone can. But if you are interested in having a conversation about something, you can jump in and we will talk. All right. So we started speaking here about the entire commission of inquiry, the thing that is consuming most of the oxygen in the news atmosphere in Trinidad and Tobago right now. Understandably so. And you're saying, oh no, over there on TikTok that the senior guy from Paria that was there for the commission of inquiry today, he mentioned that that Paria did not prevent anyone from going to the pipe. And now, if you listen to what he was saying, and that's why I was saying in the initial part, that if you listen to what they're saying, they're talking like executives of a company trying to save face, trying to speak in legal enough language to not implicate themselves, not admit guilt anyway, not make themselves or the company they represent look bad anyway. That's the language they were trying to use. They were not trying to use language to make people feel good, and it seems obvious now. So when he was asked that question about preventing, he went into the details and technicalities, as in, what do you mean by prevent? Because the point he was making is that they could not have prevented the divers from going and rescuing if indeed, as did happen, some divers were already trying to do the rescue. Earl Plantain says, my bad, says blame has to be shared. Divers did not have commercial equipment, plus safety plan was lacking. He was playing smart with foolishness. Well, that's kind of how legal action goes. Playing smart with foolishness is the domain of law. As you've heard some people say, the law is an ass. So you're playing smart with foolishness is kind of directly the domain of the law. That's exactly what they do. So he is trying to use direct language there. Very likely what Paria said when Paria made their statement, they didn't officially prohibit anyone from doing something as such. They probably just suggested it. So when the question was reiterated, he didn't say that he said Paria didn't demand the Coast Guard stop anyone. So they didn't demand, but maybe they suggested. Those words have meanings. Always keep that in mind. Words have meaning. So that's the road he was going down there. As I said, I don't think this has changed my opinion much on this. As much of the information that has been released, the assumption I would have, the presumption I would have, is industry poor standards, as is expected in many working environments. They did not have up to mark standards. That was something that was very likely known by the contractor. That was something very likely known by the owner too, by Paria too. Very likely both of them knew this. It's like in residential construction. In residential construction, if someone is up on a third story, on a third lift on a scaffold, they're supposed to have harnesses, and that scaffold is supposed to be attached to the wall in some kind of way. But almost all of the time that you see that happen, there isn't any safety there. Sometimes the scaffolds aren't fully rigged. There are X's missing in the connection of the scaffold. The scaffold isn't fully level, and those things happen all the time. The thing is, if somebody actually, unfortunately, I hope it happens to no one, but if someone gets into an accident and dies, then all of those safety requirements really come into question. But in the day-to-day running of things, many of these industries don't run totally up to mark. And I wouldn't doubt that the Paria executives may have been aware of that, just as LMCS may have been aware of that. They just didn't expect that all of these circumstances were going to align at the same time to create this kind of incident. The unfortunate thing for Paria is that in a case like this, they want heads to rule. People will want heads to rule. And okay, LMCS, the contractor, we can't demand the heads ruled there. The only thing you could demand that from the general public is that you don't want Paria to hire them again to do another contract. And that's not something that generally the public would be overly interested in. Where people would want heads to rule is inside of Paria. It's like when there was the oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico. I believe it was a contractor of a subcontractor of a subcontractor or something like that who made the initial mistake and the pressure in the line and whatever. And ultimately what ended up spilling is hundreds of tons of BP's oil ended up in the Gulf of Mexico. Now, BP could have said that it was some small contractor's fault, but at the end of the day, when the billions had to be paid out, BP had to pay the billions, because when people are looking for the person to blame, they were looking at the head, they were looking at the top. How could Paria say anything but that they're at the top there? It's hard to excuse that. And when you go to the public there and then make it seem like you're trying to excuse it at every turn, it doesn't actually come off looking good. Ono says Prakash asked that senior manager today to rate Paria's management handling of this incident, and the man said excellent. Yes, I saw that. Not surprised. As I said, they're trying to speak legal language. If you were to say that our handling of the incident was less than satisfactory, then they would ask him, what did you do that was less than satisfactory? And you're going to put yourself in some more trouble there. So by saying excellent, he puts himself out of any range of other further questions. He's trying to answer with trying to keep himself out of legal corners. Donovan Gurlal says someone in Paria caused that vacuum. Well, I hope further questions could be asked then, because if that is the case, then that's something wholly different. If it was actually an error, a mistake on Paria's part, something they actually went out there and did that caused it, that's a whole other issue. I don't know if there's enough proof of that necessarily, but I've heard it before. All right, yes, it is Thursday evening. We're just talking on this Thursday evening, chilling here in the Mindful Live session. If anyone has any questions or comments, you just jump in the chat and talk. Tell us what you think, or ask a question. Or if you want to actually have a conversation, you can jump in over there on TikTok, and we'll have that conversation. Join the live in voice, in vocal person. So yeah, what's the good on this Thursday? I heard there was a human head found near Maloney. Yep, in the storm drains by Maloney. A human head. Jeez. That seems like some South American stuff, if I'm being very honest with you. Like, if I were to just speak stereotypically and snatch at an assumption, that seems like some South American cartel kind of stuff. If the regular Trini gang's reaching to beheading, yeah, we getting bleak. That's not the typical Trini gangster way. But that's some bleak stuff. That's some dark stuff. Are we learning crime from the South Americans? Of course we are. If you're thinking about the kind of, like, I am not of the opinion that every Venezuelan that comes over to Trinidad is a criminal. Of course not. Of course that's not the case. But by the very nature of of the whole event of traveling from Trinidad to be Venezuela to Trinidad, and the fact that the whole thing, a lot of it is illegal. So, you're into smuggling there, you're with underworld figures. The fact is, a lot of the people coming over would be some criminally minded folk. Yo, Chrissy at 68, yes, you are on the inside. Same thing I said when the news hit, had to be South American styling. Yeah. And I think the nature of how we're even handling this Venezuelan situation would create for some more of that. To me, we are asking, as it were, the worst Venezuelans to be the majority here. If you wanted to get some of the better Venezuelans, then the things that we were talking about, like regularizing some of them, yeah, you would be very strict about that, and then also very strict about putting out anyone who does not have their papers. But the thing is, we aren't even strict about the papers thing. There are Venezuelans right now struggling to get their stuff renewed, and like I was saying this previously in the live, that very often when you see corruption, something that you notice very often with corruption is that corruption isn't just a matter of the society being corrupt. Corruption sometimes is symptomatic of the difficulty there is in the society to get things done the right way. If it's very difficult to get things done the right way, then very often you see corruption coming out because of that. So get their children in schools. Yeah, that is one. If you are making it difficult for Venezuelans who want to do the right thing to do the right thing, then you are going to encourage them to do more of the wrong thing. They aren't going to suffer. They aren't going to watch their children starve. They are going to find other alternative methods to get things done. Good night, Tony the Ambassador. A story I was reading this week gone here. Venezuelans worried about lack of stickers for registration cards. With just over a month to go before the extension of work permits for Venezuelans expires, hundreds of them have still not received the official sticker on their registration cards. In Legal Notice 53, published in the Gazette on March 1st, the Ministry of National Security extended the validity of the registration cards until December 31st. The notice was signed by National Security Minister Fitzgerald Hines on February 9th. It applied to 13,500 Venezuelans who registered in March 2021. In June 2019, initially 15,000 plus Venezuelans registered, but some have left Trinidad or did not re-register. This is the fourth extension of work permits for registered Venezuelans. Now, what do you think is going to happen in the live? What do you think is going to happen if come December 31st, when all of these work permits become expired and we have not put things in place to re-register those people for them to update the stickers on their permits? Do you think that all of them are going to be like, oh no, I did not get my sticker updated, it's best I return to Venezuela then? Snap. Do you think that's what's going to happen? Or are these people who are looking for a better life for them and their families, are these people going to still remain here and just now have to function in the shadow of the law? And wouldn't we have created more criminals out of what could have been visiting workers? Out of what could have been a group of legal migrant workers, we then create a group of illegal migrant workers who now must work underhandedly and increase the criminality in the country in general. And we started talking about this for some who may have now jumped in, as someone was mentioning the beheading of someone. The beheaded head of someone was found right in the storm drain next to the highway outside from Maloney there. And, that seems to have a bit of trademark of the kind of South American cartel style of real serious violence. That hasn't generally been how Trini violence goes. Most Trini gangsters shoot and that's it. They aren't on this whole chop up and cut up business. If we're getting there, that's dark. It doesn't help. Not all Venezuelans want to come to Trinidad. They have other options. That's correct. So it's going to be 31 million versus 1.4 million we have to submit. Nah, all Venezuelans aren't coming here. Some are going to others. I think the majority aren't even coming here. Many others are going to other Spanish-speaking countries in South America. Some are indeed coming. That is a pertinent question, though. How much? How much? That's a question I notice. Many people who are very pro-immigration, and we must help everyone in the world, and I understand wanting to be a good kind person. I understand I want to be a good kind person too, but there must be a number limit. What is the number limit? Like, how many people can we help? How many people can we bring into the country? There is an upward limit on that. Regularly you hear some people talk about immigration and helping others, and it seems like when they say that, they don't have that idea in mind. Like, okay, yes, help, but okay, what's the limitation on that help? You can't, if you have a boat, if you have a life raft, and it could hold some people who might be drowning. You could hold some, you may not be able to hold everyone. And if you attempt to hold everyone, then we'd all fall into the water, and then we'd all drown. And who would that benefit really and truly? So, there must be a limit on this. There must be a limit. All right. No one in the live having a topic or a question or wanting to jump into chat? No one feeling in a chatty mood to jump in and have a conversation over there on TikTok? Or any further questions or comments? What's on your mind tonight? What's your mind full of? What you're thinking about? What do you think of the methanol refueling station? The proposed methanol refueling station where we're going to provide the fuel of the future? That's great. Let me share this to Ria. I saw Ria jumped in the live some time ago. I don't know if she's still here, but I saw her jump in. She probably jumped back out. Should be lots of money for the country. Should be. That's the thing with plans. Plans are in the future. We'd see how that goes. But Trinidad is well positioned for that. So it should be something valuable. Question: what would you think about a simultaneous NIS system for migrants to contribute to? I don't know if I will call it NIS in terms. I don't know if I'll call it NIS in terms of national. I don't know if I will want it nationalized, as in the government running that. I think that should be something that private insurances should be able to provide. Provide a private insurance option for them. Why not? Why not? Because for it to be nationalized, you run into the problem of the fact that nationalized things are generally backed by the government's money. If NIS falls short, then you expect that the government finances would kind of, bring up the rest. I don't know if I want to give that assurance to non-citizens of the country, if you understand what I mean. Not being hateful, just being realistic. So yeah, I don't know if I'll do that, but having some kind of work insurance is important, and regularizing the working migrants, I think, is a crucial thing. It's something that has to be done. That is essential for their safety and essential for the proper functioning of the labor market in Trinidad and Tobago. Earl Pantin says we need to better fund schools and reduce the teacher-student ratio. We do. Pointing that out, I haven't said this for some time now, so I'll just input this one time. All of this is being brought to you by Mindful Education, Mindful with 2 L's as spelt on my t-shirt, Mindful Education. That is the educational service that I run, that is run and overseen by me. We offer pod learning pods for small groups of students, from groups of students around 6 in each group, from the ages of preschool straight up to CXC, we offer these pod learning classes where you have that more personalized attention. You have the ability for students to know each other in the class and know their tutor and their teachers much better, allowing the learning to be more fun and accessible and friendly towards them. So if you are interested in such, feel free to contact me wherever you can, or head over to our Instagram page, Mindful Education, mindful_education, and follow us there. Contact information is over there too. But yes, we do need to better fund schools and reduce the teacher-student ratio. And I will say better fund as in not necessarily more funding, because the present system that we have running our schools, I think if we give them $300 billion, the schools still will not be up to mark, because it's just a flawed and a faulty system. The nature of how the system is run is it's flawed and faulty. It might be, I wonder how good things could be without real competition. So if teachers once hired in a school know that, especially a government school, if you're hired in a government school as a teacher, all you need to do is go and show your face and sign your name. The performance of your students really is inconsequential to anything. If these things are in a kind of private market, like for example me, if I am teaching and I'm teaching well, the better I teach, the more students I get, the more resources I make. If I am not teaching well and I'm teaching poorly and there are better teachers out there, then I lose students. So I have an impetus, I have an incentive to try to be the best I can be. But the nature of the public education system is there aren't many incentives for the best people could be inside there. And then when you combine that with the one size fits all kind of attitude inside of the public education system, where it seems like they assume every child is going to learn similarly, so they streamline the entire system into one stream of learning, it's kind of ridiculous. If they own a property and have a proper record of employment or rent, they can get residency. Government funded schools can do the bare minimum, are propped up by this government. Yes, whether they do the bare minimum or not, sometimes they are still propped up. Is our education seemingly watered down, as was stated some time ago by our Prime Minister? I don't know if it's watered down, but the education system cannot go full speed ahead when you have a mixed bag of students. That's just the reality. All students don't learn the same. All students don't learn at the same rate. If you have 40 students in a classroom and you're saying every child must get a place, so you have 40 students and they're ranging from the sharpest, quickest learners to the learners that require the most repetition, then you have all of them together. The entire system would have to slow down to the speed of at least the slowest, or maybe the median or the middle learner. That's the entire system. And then you would end up with frustrated students that are learning too slow, and students who are still not able to keep up with the class, and the top of the class and the bottom of the class both aren't benefiting from the system. So obviously you'll end up with a watered down system. From the moment you have an idea where everyone must get a place, where everyone must reach into the system, then obviously it would have to be watered down for everyone to get that place. It's the very nature of it. So yeah, it might be watered down in that sense, but if you're talking about the syllabus, as in the lessons that we are supposed to learn throughout our education system, if you keep up to date with the idea of the syllabus in Trinidad and Tobago, our syllabus isn't that watered down. No, our syllabus is competitive on a global standard, I would say. So no, I wouldn't say the syllabus is watered down. I would say how we present it, in particular in government schools, that yeah, it's probably very watered down in that case. Yeah. Further comments or questions? We're talking. It's Thursday. You know what Thursday is? We're talking on a Thursday. Anyone else inside of the chat? The focus of the system is one-sided. That's the real problem. One-sided, I suppose you mean on academics. Then if that's what you're saying, then I agree. I agree. If you could make one change to the education system, what would it be and why? One change. One change. Giving everyone a place after primary school. And the reason I would make that change now, that's a kind of cruel change. It's a kind of cruel change. What you're going to end up with is a certain amount of 12, 13, 14-year-old students that crop up at the end of primary school that aren't able to make it over to secondary school. That's what that change is going to create. But I will do that because I think the problem we are having right now, in particular, if we are to focus on where the problem is in the movement of children from primary school to secondary school. Many of the children moving up from primary school to secondary school aren't able to keep up with the level of work in secondary schools. They aren't able to keep up with that level of work in secondary schools, so it's keeping the entire secondary school system back. Then it's encouraging that delinquency. If you aren't paying attention to the schoolwork, obviously you're going to find your interest in other things. If you are unable to show yourself shining in the class, if you are unable to place yourself in the class hierarchy based on education and what you learn, then you're going to find another way to do it, and yeah, bullying pops up then. What would you put in place for those who can't or don't make it? One would be a certificate to show what you learned up until primary school. Maybe that certificate, and we had that before. I heard the Minister of Education previously talk about that. That certificate, we had it once upon a time before. Once upon a time, there was a certificate you could get for leaving primary school. It shows a certain amount of basics. Maybe you can carry that certificate and use that certificate to sign up for a trade school. You could use that certificate to get into a military camp. You could use that certificate to get into probably the base rung of MTS. That kind of thing. The certificate shows that at least you reached a certain point in primary school. That's what I would have. Something alternative. The idea being, I think it's ridiculous and cruel even to take children who are unable to keep up with that and put them into 5 more years of the very same thing. And 5 more years during the period of their life where everything is haywire. It's the adolescent period. Let's all remember what teenage years were like. You're trying to place yourself in the world, place yourself in the hierarchy of your own sex in terms of men. Where do I place in terms of all the other men around me? Where do I place in terms of all the other girls around me? There's a lot of confusion going on just by the very nature of adolescence. And then you're going to take those children and put some of them who are struggling with the schoolwork aspect of that and put them to do it for 5 years every day. That's daily embarrassment for 5 years. That does not make sense. It really does not. If they were incapable of understanding the work at the end of standard 5, they aren't magically going to get it in form 1. And then they are going to be lost from the form 1 work, which means they are going to be even further back in form 2 and further back in form 3 and continue going down that path. Green Isles Gardner says offer more funding awards, salary bonuses, equipment to teachers and schools for doing well. Yes, offer non-academic children alternative paths. Offer more. Yeah. Funding. That's the difficulty with doing that from the government side. You see, if it's private, that's automatic. If it's a private school, as I was saying before, the better the school does, automatically they get better resources for it. But on the government side, can you imagine Green Isle Gardner? Can you imagine if one school does well, then the government funds the school that is doing well more? They give more money to that school, they give more awards to that school, and they increase the salary of the teachers there. Then the students in that school do even better, which means they're going to do the same thing again. and they could understand what's going to start to happen. The government is going to start to fund certain schools a lot more and certain schools a lot less. And then what do you think is going to happen when people start to notice patterns developing in some of these schools? What is the nature of the location these schools are in? What is the nature of the demographic of the students? What is the racial makeup of these students? Those kind of, a government doing that, as good as the idea might sound, a government doing that is going to end in some serious disaster. Yeah, real bacchanal. Tony the Ambassador says, is it that they can't learn or do they need more attention? They need more attention. I do not believe that there's any child who cannot learn. If you cannot learn, then you cannot live. Children learn. Even the slowest learner still has to learn something in between being born and reaching the age they are at. You pretty much any child who is able to reach into standard 5 is able to learn some things. Now, Earl Panton says they need to focus. That's part of it. Some children need to focus, but we have to face the reality. All children are not the same. Even if you give all children the same amount of attention, the same amount of teaching and etc., they are not all going to respond the same to the knowledge. It's just the nature of reality. Not every human being could run as fast as Usain Bolt. Like, to me, identify where their natural abilities lie. I agree totally with that. To me, it seems a bit unfortunate that we are so able to look and see that, yeah, there are differentials in terms of people's running speed. There are some people who are naturally able to run faster than some. There are people who are naturally able to swim faster than some. There are people who are naturally able to jump higher than some. There are people who are able to write faster than some. All those things are normal, but then sometimes we try to make it seem like we don't understand that in learning, in grasping new academic topics, there are some people who just learn faster than some. It's the nature of variability in humankind. That's reality. Nothing we could do about that. However, I do believe every child could learn. The problem is the ever famous saying that if you test a fish by its ability to fly, the fish would always think it's a failure. That's part of it. You don't want it to be that you have children with differential learning abilities and you all test them the same way for the same thing. It just does not make sense. It just does not make sense. And if the idea of testing is to see if the child learns something, then you don't want to test all of them the same thing for the same thing all the time, because what this one child may be learning, we want to test him, okay, is he learning this kind of advanced stuff? And then this child, the level he may be learning at, we want to test him for that. So giving them all the same lessons and the same tests, I think is just a bad idea. Some of these kids don't even have a safe home to go to and come back from. Yes, that is part of it. There are social factors in it. The reality is, though, that very often if the child is up to learning, sometimes even in an unsafe home environment, you still see that shining through. You still see that shining through. It's like, I think, I don't know how many of you are really familiar, and I don't know how many schools still have it. I'm not overly versed in primary school running. How many schools still have the A, B, C, D classes? And many people hated that idea, where you segregate the students based on their performance in the last test, and that's the class they go into. I think that did not go far enough. Maybe take away some of the stigma. The idea isn't that the A class is going to get to the best schools and get the best jobs, and the D class is going to go to the worst schools and get the worst jobs. That's not the idea you want. It's just they have different learning styles, learning abilities. And teachers, Assyria came back. And teachers, I think their main job in that early learning section is separating children by their abilities. People don't like that idea, but I think that is the most sensible idea. The teachers in early education are supposed to be like the sorting hat in Harry Potter. You're supposed to be the sorting hat of sorts. Okay, this child, you go into Hufflepuff. You Gryffindor. You, Slytherin. We don't know what's going on with you. You go to Slytherin. Nisi says most can learn, however, when you have 40 children in a class with one teacher and his syllabus to finish. Yeah, that's a problem. That's a problem. The mathematics of teaching is a problem. The amount of students for the amount of teachers would always be a problem, especially when you have those with the different learning abilities. Early ed might actually be too early, but streaming is effective. When I'm saying early education, I don't mean preschool. I mean like primary school. That's from 5 to 12. That's from 5 to 12. And I think that's the ideal point to start streaming into areas where their learning styles would be best suited. But yeah, especially with the large classes, and mixing everyone in, that's a recipe for disaster. Green Isle says message lost. I said they need to offer financial and resource prizes to kids instead of medals. Oh, all right. Huh. Who is they? Who is they? Financial and resource prizes to kids instead of medals for sports. You're going to run into problems with that. You're going to run into problems when you start to talk about paying out money. Anytime you're talking about paying out money, you're running into some problems. It's according to what it's for. For sports, if you win a sport event that garnered money, then it makes sense you make some money for it. For academics, I don't think so. That's going to be problematic. All right. Anyone inside of the live looking to chat? Any other comments or questions? Anyone want to jump in the live and discuss, have a conversation? So yeah, Thursdays are Talk Tuesdays. So if you're looking to talk, come next Thursday. Have an idea of something you want to talk about. If you always wanted, to jump in and have a bit of a conversation. Next Thursday would be the same thing again. We'd be able to, just chill and converse. In the earlies we used to have an after live chat, after we finish the stories, we just hang around and chat and people jump in. So this could be that of sorts. Yeah. Green Isles gardener. What kind of garden do you have, sir? I do some gardening of my own. I don't know if I might be so arrogant to call myself a gardener, but I do some gardening. I dabble in the dirt. Okay. Are we at the end here? Is that all the comments or questions that we have had? This migration situation will change our country forever. Government needs to address. I was saying this since a while ago, that it's not that it would change or will change our country forever. I think the Venezuelan migrant situation has already changed our country forever. Trinidad and Tobago is irrevocably changed already because of the migrant situation. That amount of people coming into the country in a short period of time, that has already changed our country permanently. What's your take on the Paria situation? We were talking about that at the very beginning, Darian Joseph, and I was saying my view hasn't changed. I don't think much new information has come out with the Commission of Inquiry. My view remains that the people at Paria, the heads at Paria, seem to have, from the very jump of the situation, from the moment they found out about the situation, their main intent was saving face, figuring out how to make themselves look as little bad as possible. they want to look as good as possible throughout it and not look like they had any part to play in it. I think that was the main part on their side from the very beginning, and that's what we are seeing them trying to defend all the time now. And I think that the mistakes made were regular in the industry. Like, it wasn't something that was out of the ordinary in the industry. It might have been something pretty regular, that the contractor didn't have all of the equipment that they were supposed to have, and Paria might have known that, and that is how they run many of the contracts. And you know, it's all fine and good until something actually happens. And something actually did. Good night, Wendy Medium XL. Private or charity funded sports takes a while to type. Charity funded sports leagues can sponsor school books, internet data plan, etc. I could agree with that. Does anyone else think that the venues are not as attractive as when we first saw them? So stop it. So stop it. So that is not a politically correct thing to be saying. That is a horribly unpolitically correct thing to be saying. But if you find so, then very likely what was happening in the initial part, good evening, Serene, in the initial part, what was very likely happening is, you know, the whole idea of new, that exotic idea where something is just new, so it looks very exotic in your eye, and when it's no longer new, then it doesn't look as exotic anymore. That may be part of it, but anyway. Earl Panton says their children will rebel because government failed to provide an avenue for them to uplift themselves. I remember a couple of years ago reading a case study from over in Sweden. Stop. Let me see. Reading a case study from over in Sweden, and they were talking about the migrant situation in Sweden, and Sweden was struggling with their migrants, particularly the Somalian migrants. The Somalian migrants were not integrating into the Swedish society, and they were having some rape. You know, I was trying to find a euphemistic way to say that, but some assaults were happening, you know, regularly, and they were having real problems with their migrant situation, etc. And what some investigations were noting is that it was not the first generation migrants actually. It was not the first generation migrants. It was actually the second generation migrants who were causing most of the problems. The children born into the migrant societies. And the problem they were having there is that they were born in Sweden into migrant societies that were not integrated into the society. So they grew up in really strong Somalian culture. But the real Somalians don't see them as Somalians, and the Swedish don't see them as Swedish. So they're there just in purgatory. They're there just balancing on the in-between. And you have a whole young generation growing up like that, where they are also excluded, because they were speaking about how racist certain things are in Sweden, where they may not be overtly in terms of what they will tell you, but the general running of the society is just extremely racist. So they are excluded from so many things in society that you end up with that whole class of young men who have a vengeful heart. They were looking to take it back out on society. So I say all of that to say the point you were making there, Earl Panton, is a viable one, where we have to wonder what would be the reaction of the second generation born into Trinidad, where if they are not being educated properly, so they're born and they're living in a slum, in a 4-apartment little slum, piled in and packed in with numerous other Venezuelan families, and they don't learn English too properly because they never went to school. They learned broken Spanish, broken Venezuelan vernacular Spanish. They learned broken Trini English. So they never learned any standard language. And you have a whole generation there. That's a scary thing. You don't really want that. Trust me, we don't want that in our country at all. You can make, Earl Panton says you can make more money from crime than an 8 to 4, so we are leaving their children to survive at all costs. Yeah. Yeah. If you could make more money from crime, the only thing that would stop you from that is a good upbringing. And if you are making sure they didn't have a good upbringing and then they can make more money from crime, what do you think is going to happen? Listen, I am a man, I reside in some hotspot areas, some areas known for, certain less than perfectly favorable activities. So I have seen how certain businesses run. And I could tell you in Trinidad and Tobago right now, there are several Venezuelan salesmen in illicit businesses. If I'm speaking too euphemistically, there are several Venezuelan pushers already on Trinidadian blocks. Venezuelans selling drugs to Trinis in Trinidad already. Not something strange. And it's no surprise, really. So, yeah. We don't want that. You're winning. So they're winning Wi-Fi for the school. The problem, Green Isle Gardner, is nearly any kind of system where you give benefit to the winner is going to cause the winner to become better at winning. It's like the reason resources accumulate in a certain spot. The Pareto principle, they consider it. In nearly every system, there's a congregation of resources, a congregation of nearly anything in any system, where you'd see if there are 10 people, one person is going to have the majority and the 9 people are going to have the minority. Nearly every system. And the way how things go, it just reinforces that. Do you agree that we Trinis have an eye for what? Yes, Sig Scrapper. Yeah, it's just going to rebound on itself. So if you have a school that performs well, and the better they perform, the more things they win, and they win Wi-Fi and they win computers for their school, then you're going to make it easier for that school to perform well again. And then as they perform well, they're going to get more, and as they get more, they're going to perform well, and you just keep going on and on like that. You see Digicel charging you to pay them now. Wait, what? No, I did not see that. Morgan Job once said, we have an eye for shades of grey. The full statement didn't come in there. Yeah, Trinis do, and that's why they call us Tricky Daddians. We like a good scheme, and schemes require really understanding the shades of grey. Things aren't black and white. You could always walk. When there are shades of grey, there are many other pathways to walk, It's not that simple. You think they're giving free internet and data? Okay, charging you to pay them now. What is that? $3 to pay your bill. Oh gosh, we need more competition. That's what we need. We need Elon Musk to come with Starlink and give us direct internet, direct satellite internet, bypass Digicel, bypass TSTT and B-Mobile and all of them, bypass Flow, bring in some competition, international competition, because these guys are joking. Yeah, folks, it's 10:30. This is around the time where the little boss starts making noise. Is that even possible, the competition? Possible in terms of legally? I think it's up to the Telecommunications Authority who they would let in, but in terms of possibility, like just in infrastructurally, yeah. Legally, I don't know. I believe it's according to the telecommunications industry authority. I believe it's up to them if they would grant like licensing and permission and all of that kind of stuff. But if you're talking if you're talking, they come like political parties. If you're talking satellite internet, maybe there might come a time where you may be able to even bypass whether there is permission or not for it. So who knows where the future leads? I would like that. If there isn't anything like permission, you buy your equipment, you set up your equipment, and it works. Perfect. Beautiful. Well, we might as well forget about that competition for DG and B Mobile. Well, there is Flow, and well, Amplia is B Mobile, so I guess there isn't that. PNM UNC Digicel B Mobile. Yes, yes. That's a good corollary there. That's a good relation. They wanted to. I know, but that's the PNM government for you. That's the PNM government more than anything. And if you want more competition, you don't want the PNM. That's how you'd put it. Like the PNM is just so lucky. The UNC party is so addicted to corruption, and they scare the general public of Trinidad and Tobago so much. Because the PNM government, when it comes to locking down the business atmosphere and environment in the country, they are incomparable when it comes to that. And they would open something like the methanol refueling station, which is great and grand, but that's the kind of massive industry that the PNM focuses on, where, you know, they may be able to create some jobs, but then you would work under them. They're not looking for you to create a company on your own. They don't want that. The government will create the company, and you will go work for the government. Work for the government till you're dead. The mantra of the PNM, apparently. All right, folks. All right. It's 10:34. I think that's all we have for now. I'm not seeing any further comments or questions. So next Thursday, come with your comments, come with your questions, come with your conversations that you're looking to have, because that's what we're doing on Thursdays from now on. Thursdays, just, you know, the spontaneous talk Thursdays. We'll just jump in and see where the news and current events lead us. So if there is nothing more, I will bid you guys adieu. All right, it passed my bedtime. Well, not past mine. I have other things to still do. But latest, folks, I hope you're educated, informed, or entertained. And I will see you guys in the next Mindful Life, which will be tomorrow evening, Friday at 9:15 or there and thereabouts. Until then, folks, see y'all. Peace.